Hello. I shared a video in a Discord server, and it was called Playful Discipleship in Discord Nation with Grim Grizz. And a character in a Discord server by the name of God Voice shared Luke chapter 6, 39 through 49. And I'll just read what he shared. Can the blind lead the blind? Will they not both fall into a pit? The student is not above the teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like their teacher. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take the speck out of your eye," when you yourself fail to see the plank in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the plank out of your eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but could not shake it because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete. And so God Voice also said, discipleship and church planting are two different things. You don't have to be Abraham or Moses. Whose discipleship will you be under? If no one's, then it would be dangerous to follow your leading. I get that it's hard to find the good leadership. I haven't found it yet either. So yeah, I've been wrestling with discipleship and leadership, these ships on the sea of chaos. Whose discipleship will you be under? Well, the one that I've found to be most helpful so far is Jesus. So, Jesus, we have a collection of things that Jesus said and did, and we can, what I found is I could use those to practice making Jesus my king, and that means my teacher. And then I try to be careful. So Jesus might say something like, carry your cross, and I actually have a temptation to go build a cross out of 4x4s and to carry it up and down a hill, and to start doing that as like a workout. Now, would that be wrong for me to start doing that? To start to build a cross and carry a cross? Would that be wrong? And so, I think the obvious point is that a good teacher could help a student understand the many ways you might interpret Jesus' teaching of carry your cross. And yeah, how do you find people who would be a good teacher? And so for me, I've before I decided to make Jesus my king, I tried to treat everyone as my teacher, and so that's still with me. And so when people say something, when people try to teach me something, I have to practice treating them as a teacher or a healer. But that does not mean that I accept everything they say and treat them as an authority who is not to be questioned. And so what I find is that as I question people, I can begin to see how good they are at teaching. I can begin to see how good they are at, for example, how many ways can you interpret this idea to carry your cross? And what do you say to the person who wants to build a cross out of 4x4s and begin carrying it regularly? And what I find is that very few people can play with as many interpretations as possible. What most people do is they arrive at an interpretation and then don't want to read other interpretations. What's interesting is that among the people who can read the most interpretations that I can think of, I'll just call them out. I'll think of Joseph. So Joseph is Jewish. And then also I would point at some Jewish teachers. And so there are Jewish people and Jewish teachers who seem to be able to have a capacity to interpret words in many ways. And, you know, I think that Christianity kind of has a tradition of beating that out of people. And that's why it's hard to find a wise Christian who's willing and able to try and look at the many interpretations and the many approaches. And so, for example, you could look at 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. We could go look at that right now. 2 Timothy, let me pause and go pull that up. All scripture is breathed out by God and profitable for teaching, for reproof, for correction, and for training in righteousness, that the man of God may be complete, equipped for every good work. So, there are people who read this, and that is the reason. Where's my prop? Here's my prop. That is the reason that they will uphold this, right? And they won't look at, for example, they won't ask themselves, who wrote this? When did they write it? Who did they write it for? And what did they mean when they wrote it? Because when you start to do that, you can begin to interpret this thing in other ways, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that if I go to the book of Revelation, or even 2 Timothy 3:16, it doesn't mean that that is scripture, right? Now I can see how people can read that and then make the leap of faith, and then arrive at a conclusion about an interpretation which they accept, and they reject every other interpretation. I can see how people do that. I'm a human. But what else can it mean? That's the question. Like, I have ideas about what else that can mean. And so, you know, my teacher needs to be able to come up with many possible interpretations of what 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 could mean. Similarly, I had someone point at Romans, where the scripture, the verse, the text talks about authority. And, you know, there's people who interpret the verse, and I then present, like with 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17, I then try to present alternative interpretations. And with Romans, I try to present alternative interpretations, and it's rejected. And so, yeah, I mean, my teacher has to be able to consider multiple interpretations. My teacher, if you look at 2 Timothy 3:16, my teacher needs to be able to do correction, self-correction, error correction, and needs to be capable of becoming more righteous through this process of learning, through this process of being a man of God, to be made complete and equipped for every good work. And, you know, you say God voice, discipleship, and church planting are two different things. And I'm not so sure you're right. Can you explain why discipleship and church planting are two different things? Because when a person produces words which is profitable for my correction, improvement, movement towards righteousness, becoming more complete and more equipped for good work, when a person, a living person, produces words which causes me to go this way, then I feel like I just got connected to someone that I want to be I don't even know, it's like I am now connected to a church. There was a planting that happened. Now, so what do you mean by church? And what do you mean by discipleship? So this process of making disciples, to me, seems like the process of planting, and it seems like the process of creating churches and growing churches. I don't see them as being separated, so maybe you can help me. I would say that the person who helped me, who taught me, he approached it with humility, and he was trying to enter into a relationship with me in which he would move closer to God. And so he was trying to move closer to God, and I was trying to move closer to God, and we were doing it together, and it happened. I know that he said words that helped me move closer to God. And, you know, hopefully I can be someone who produces words which helps other people move closer to God. And then as we move closer to God together, hopefully churches come into existence and grow. So That's all. I appreciate the prompting, the feedback, the input. I hope you have a great day.